So English Electric Motor Company have been kind enough to lend me this beautiful looking Zero SRS for a week, and I'm out here in the sunny Kent countryside to tell you all about it. So this bike is pretty much the same as Zero's naked sports bike, the SRF. I was lucky enough to take that one out for a couple of hours last year, courtesy again of English Electric Motor Company, and I absolutely loved it, so much so that I claimed it was the best electric motorcycle on the market in 2019. It had performance and build quality to rival what you'd get with an internal combustion bike. It was an absolute blast to ride, and it was also 10 grand cheaper than the Harley Livewire and lighter and cheaper than the equivalent Energica. So fortunately, a lot of the thrills are carried over to this bike. The same J1 brakes, which have got a nice gentle bite to them, but then as the power comes on, there's plenty there. Separate function, big piston, upside down Showa forks that are fully adjustable, and a fully adjustable Showa shock at the rear as well. A nice looking steel trellis frame that cradles that battery, and it's the same 14.4 kilowatt hour battery as well. The same motor that delivers around 110 horsepower and 190 newton meters of peak torque. That's pretty massive compared to equivalent petrol bikes. The Triumph Rocket 3, of course, is the world's torquiest production motorcycle, and I think that puts out about 220, but that's a 300 kilogram bike, and this is around 230. Belt driven as well, like the SRF, so no chain maintenance needed there. And then it gets all the same electronics, so a TFT dash, which you can connect your phone to via Bluetooth. And the cool thing about that is that you can customize all the settings, and you can see things like the charge status. So if you've left your bike charging and you want to see if it's done, you can check on the app. There's eco riding mode to save battery, rain to keep you out of trouble with all that torque, sport, and then beast mode, which just maxes everything. But you can customize all of the individual settings for traction control and power delivery and that sort of thing in the app with a custom riding mode. ABS and traction control are lean sensitive, so it's got pretty much all the riding aids you'd need. The only thing that I've noticed that's missing is the ability to pair a headset to the dash and control phone calls, music, and have nav and those sorts of things. That's becoming more and more common on new bikes, and so perhaps with something that's meant to be at the cutting edge of motorcycle technology, you might have expected this to come with it as well. But ultimately, I'm just glad that that performance and power delivery is all carried over from the SRF, because I absolutely loved riding that bike, and this is a blast to ride as well. Now, most of the day I've been riding it in eco mode because I wanted to save battery and make sure I got all the filming in that I needed without having to charge too many times. It obviously has limited top speed, limited power delivery, and regenerative deceleration is set to the max, so you're going to get as much battery back as possible when you're off the throttle or going downhill or on the brakes. The thing is, I think this is all you need, especially if you're commuting or whatever, because watch this from a standstill, full throttle. That was up to 50 really quickly. In and around town, it's way quicker than any car or van or truck or whatever away from the lights. But the real fun is to be had in beast mode, where everything is maxed out, and I've selected that now. And when you pin the throttle, oh my goodness, it's unreal. The power delivery up to like 20-30 is not too crazy, but it feels like when you get to 40, 50, it'll just keep going and going and going. You're kind of expecting the sensation of a gear shift, I suppose, so that momentary lapse in acceleration, but the feeling of it just constantly accelerating with all that torque is just so addictive. Woo! Honestly, this thing is just so much fun on these types of country roads. In terms of what's different to the SRF, so of course you've got the fairing, and that might make you think that it's a sports bike and that they've gone for a more aggressive sporty style, but that's not really it. I think they've tried to build a more practical bike with this, so something that you can commute on primarily. So the screen will give you a little bit of wind protection up to your neck. Above that, you'd probably need to fit a deflector or something to get it over your head, but it is comfortable on the motorway. The more aerodynamic shape as well gives it 13% more efficiency on the motorway than the SRF. And then to make it more comfortable over distance, they've raised the bars so you can see that these come up quite high, and then the foot peg position is actually lower than the SRF. passenger pegs are lower, the pillion seat is actually bigger. It's pretty comfortable. My wife's taken a sit on it. We haven't been out for a ride together, but she's done many miles on the back of my other bikes. She liked it, and also liked the fact that it was high up enough to see over my lid as well. Of course, you'll notice that this has got panniers and a top box fitted. Plenty of capacity for commuting, of course, and you're probably not going to be doing 500-mile days on an electric bike, so you're probably going to be limited to short touring and that kind of thing. But overall, I think they've done a great job of taking that SRF platform and turning it into something that's super comfortable on the motorway and a really practical bike. The position of the bars, though, is really nice and comfortable. The ride is cushy as well, the suspension feels great. It handles well too, but it's certainly got a plush ride, and that's got to be aided by the fact that you don't have any vibrations from the engine. I also should point out, these mirrors are brilliant. They're a weird position, you know, they look a bit unusual down there, but there's no vibration, of course, and the visibility in them is brilliant, which is great when you're on the motorway and changing lanes. Perhaps the only downside for me in terms of comfort is the seat. It's a bit on the low side, and maybe if you've got a passenger and full luggage, that might be a good thing, the ability to get both your feet down quickly. But it's something like 780 mils or 790, and I think personally I would go for the 810 mil high seat option. There's also a low option if you are short in the leg, but I'm not exactly tall at 175 centimeters or about 5'9". But I still think I'd appreciate the extra leg room and height of that 810 mil tall seat option, and that's certainly a seat height that's more in line with similar bikes in the market. So the question is, like, what is this bike really for? Is it a tourer? It certainly looks like a sports tourer, or is it limited to commuting? If you know the exact route you're doing every day, you know the distance, you know there's going to be a charging point at work, or you know you can get there and back without charging, then it's a no-brainer. It's such a fun bike to ride. It's quick, it's practical, you've got luggage, you've got wind protection, you've got heated grips, all that good stuff. It'd make a great commuting bike, and personally, I'd be tempted to run something like this alongside my petrol bike and use this purely for commuting if I could afford two bikes. But could you really tour on it? Well, I think you'd have to be a certain type of tourer who likes to plan ahead, don't mind not having a lot of spontaneity in your day, and don't mind taking regular breaks. So for example, the sort of trip you could plan, it's only 60 miles down to the Eurotunnel from London, and there are charging points at the terminal there as well. So you could plug it in, go and get yourself a coffee while you wait for your turn, and then when you get to the other side, I mean, Bruges is like an hour's ride away, you could easily get there. Paris, you could maybe get there if you stopped halfway to charge. You just have to look ahead and make sure there are charging points. But this bike charges so quickly because this is the premium version of the SRS, so it has a 6 kilowatt charger built in. And then in the tank here, there's either storage, or you can opt for extra battery capacity or an additional charger that will make it charge even quicker. With a rapid charger, it takes about an hour to get to 95% on this bike, so it's really not long at all if you're stopping for lunch or something like that. English Electric Motor Company recommended me a good app called ZapMap, so I've been using that to find charging points today. Really good, plenty of charging points around here, obviously loads of them in London as well, but you still have to be a little bit careful. So for example, I went to Morrison's car park to charge it today. There was one charging unit with 3 different connector types, and it can charge AC and DC, so it could do 2 separate vehicles if one was AC and one was DC, but if they're both the same type, it can only charge one at once. So I had to wait for a car to leave before I could then charge the bike. There's also the fact that you have to like register for the different charging companies on your phone and top up your account. There's a bit of admin there getting set up, and then you've got to keep your eye on ZapMap, for example, for charging points that are damaged or closed or not working. It's great that people comment on there saying when they're broken and stuff, but it's another little caveat that you've just got to be aware of. Like I said, none of this stuff is really a problem if you're commuting, because you'll get to know where to charge it, and even if the charger that's nearest your office, for example, is broken or busy, you'll probably know some others nearby. Most days it's just not really going to be a consideration. It's just that spontaneity if you do want to just go off for a ride and get lost a little bit and pick a bit of a random route to where you want to get to. But overall, it's just such an awesome bike. I'm totally on board now with riding electric motorcycles. I think some people worry that they won't be quite as engaging to ride because you don't have the gears to manage and the clutch. And I know a lot of people miss the sound of a proper petrol engine, but Honestly, once you've ridden one and you feel that power delivery and that absolute rush when it gets going, and it's as much fun, if not more fun, than riding a petrol bike. Let me know what you think of it in the comments below though. Would you ever consider touring on something like this and planning your route carefully, or does that not appeal to you at all? Let me know in the comments below, and if you're new here and you want to see more videos like this, hit subscribe and I'll catch you next time.